This is Gavin Serkin. I'm at the SuperReturn Africa Conference in Cape Town, where we've been honoured to be addressed by Mr. F.W. DeKlerk, the former president of South Africa, who of course led the country out of apartheid and won the Nobel Peace Prize with Nelson Mandela. Mr. DeKlerk, thanks very much for joining us. In your address, you talked about many things. You talked about Africa as an awakening giant, with South Africa as playing a leading role in that. You also talked about the sophistication of the financial industry, second to none in the world, but you also raised some concerns that South Africa is facing, particularly on the level of corruption, on the level of education of the workforce. How do you see these things being addressed?
Well, the good news is that the government has realized that we need to address these issues, such as corruption, such as the problem of a failing education system, such as our very high unemployment, and that they appointed a commission which resulted in a national development plan being adopted. That national development plan contains proposals which, if implemented effectively and speedily, will be able to address those problems. Corruption is a tremendous problem and lies at the heart of the political debate at the moment. And maybe corruption can only be addressed if we have a change of leadership, which seems to be in the offing. But education, to my mind, lies at the root of our economic problems.
Now, when you talk about a change of leadership, be a bit more specific if you can. How do you see this evolving? Where do you see the ANC going?
I see the ANC, I see a new political realignment, more around values and away from old historical divisions. I see the moderates within the ANC and the radicals within the ANC getting separated from each other. The war will be who gets the trade name ANC and who forms a new party. But I see a split coming, whether it will be a series of smaller splits or one big split, I can't predict. But a split coming and a realignment in party politics, where people believing in the same values, although they find themselves in different parties, will much more easily be able to work together, form coalitions, and will be representing the overwhelming majority of South Africans, which are moderate in their outlook and who would like South Africa to succeed, and who don't believe and don't support radicalism in whatever form.
Now, we're 2 decades on from the bold steps you took to eradicate apartheid. Where has South Africa succeeded since then in building a cohesive society, and where are the limitations? Where are the biggest concerns that you have?
We are still a very divided country. The gap between rich and poor has not really been closed. We have extremely high unemployment. The official figure is 27%. But I think for black younger people between, let's say, 18 and 30, it must be about 50%. This is a time bomb on which we are sitting. So we have not succeeded in really bringing bigger cohesion, and many political parties are unfortunately using this to promote their own party particular interests rather than being committed and giving a lead on nation building. So that's a negative. On the positive side, from time to time, when we had the Soccer World Cup here, the whole nation united. We have the capacity to. Everybody respects our new flag. And if you just walk the pavements of the cities of South Africa, you find a warmth and a goodwill, which I think is our biggest and greatest asset.
And that division that you talked about has a big influence on investment, because just to take an example, in terms of fiscal cohesiveness within the country. I read somewhere that 13% of the population pay income tax. Just as an example, this is an element that the economy overall needs to address to bring more people formally into the economy.
I'm not so sure about the 13, but it is a very low figure. But everybody pays VAT. So everybody is contributing in the indirect tax method. Income tax for the higher income groups is not excessively high, it's about 41%. For companies it's even slightly lower. So at the moment the thresholds that we have isn't too high. But there is a risk that with government expenditure not being controlled very effectively, with a bloated bureaucracy and civil service, that it may turn out more negatively than I would hope. But on the other hand, we are fighting against being demoted by the ratings agencies, and there is a new spirit within government led by the Minister of Finance and supported by most in cabinet, a new spirit of we must get our economic and fiscal policies in the right place to ensure economic growth and to ensure investment confidence.
Finally, Mr. DeKlerk, because I know you've got a busy schedule, South Africa isn't the only country facing division at the moment. The US is concerned. There's a lot of concern about Donald Trump and how that will affect society. We have polarization in some parts of the US. What would be your advice to Donald Trump?
Well, before I reply to that, let me say my biggest worry is that also in Europe, all over the world, countries are becoming more inward-looking. It is as if they are prepared to turn their back on the good things which globalization can bring and which more open trade can bring. That worries me. I don't have specific advice for Donald Trump, but I would suggest that he ensures good partnership between government and the private sector. That is where the wealth will be created from such a good partnership. Not big government, but small government. That is what I believe in. And maximum economic freedom for the private sector to create wealth, which wealth can be used to address the needs of those who are greatly in need.
That's a great hope to end on. Mr. DeKlerk, it's been an honor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Everything of the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Gavin Serkin for SuperReturn Africa here in Cape Town.